And she's giving thumbs up. Folks, I do believe we are live and we are streaming with another episode of Remodelers on the Rise. And I have a two-time guest now officially, Aaron McGinnis with Craft Built. Aaron, welcome.
Howdy. Pleased to be here.
We are going to be talking about how you have approached creatively utilizing outsourcing a lot of your work, even overseas help for a lot of different tasks and work that you have in your remodeling business. And I think there's going to be good takeaways from everybody. But I wanted to share a couple things. The last time that we did, we've got a little issue that popped up, Bailey. So let's see. It says, what should we do? Hang on. Okay. Optimize quality. All right. Should we, Bailey, you can let us know if we were going to keep rocking and rolling or what we should do for that, but that's okay. The last time we went, we dug into the title was creative templates. And Aaron showed, in particular, we dug into a scheduling template that really allows a remodeler to dig in piece by piece, step by step, all those little details to make sure that we are being proactive with our scheduling. We talked about some bid templates, so do look that up in the Remodelers on the Rise archives if you'd like. And then today we're going to dig into this new topic. And Aaron, we were also talking before we click the record button about beef jerky. Would you like to comment at all about beef jerky?
Hang on. Bailey is telling me to hit refresh, so I'm hitting refresh.
Okay.
Hopefully I'll come back.
All good. Okay. Now it's just me. It's just me now, and my producer Bailey. Okay. So we'll get this recording going here. It looks like it says Aaron's browser is preventing recording, so hopefully we get that fixed.
Am I back?
You're back.
Okay, great.
And looks like we're still recording. All right.
Okay.
So as I was saying before we got into the important stuff, we were also talking about beef jerky. Can you give us one or two of your thoughts on that topic? You seemed very excited and interested in it.
It's a great source of protein. And, I think the tendency in our modern era is to go ahead and order sweet office snacks. And we just try to avoid all of that. And I'm using my NPR voice right now because I feel like beef jerky is just one of these super serious topics that we should all give more credence to. And I think that Costco has a great line of beef jerky and also assorted nut products. And I would encourage everyone to reevaluate what they eat every day and look for those high protein options.
Wonderful. And the food is supposed to, yes, we do want it to taste delicious at times. But sometimes, especially the way this came up, he was snacking on something. I said, what are you snacking on? He said, these fig da-da-da. And I said, you got those from Costco, didn't you? And that is the case. And that's why we're doing it this way. So it does say your browser is preventing recording. I think we're going to, Bailey, you can say otherwise. If it's his local may not be recording, but hopefully the overall is recording. Maybe let me know your thoughts on that. And I think we'll just kind of proceed either way. So let's get into this topic. It says here is how one remodeler is creatively utilizing overseas help. And before we kind of talk about the what you're doing and how you're doing it, why did you decide to go this route? What have you tried in the past, or kind of what led you towards this direction?
Yeah. So if we turn the clock back, at one point we had, like a lot of people, I especially had the outlook that having success as a business owner meant that you have a lot of people working for you, and you've got people running around and doing things, and you've got a big active office, and those were the hallmarks of success. I sort of equated people working for me with, we're being successful. And to wit, we had at our peak, we had three at our peak of thinking that way, not at our peak of success. We had probably 3 or 4 different full-time carpentry crews. We had a sales rep. We had a designer in-house. Actually, we had a designer and 2 architects in-house, and we had a full-time office manager, in addition to an off-site accountant. And it was a lot of overhead.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we realized, in addition to making a lot of other mistakes,
Hmm.
right? But we realized that a lot of the work that we had on site didn't need to be on site. It could be literally anywhere. And once we kind of came to that understanding that, well, this work that we have being done, does it matter if it's being done in an office 2 feet away from me? Well, no, this person could work from home. And once we started going through the, well, if they could work from home, could they work from home in Kolkata?
Hmm.
Um, and once we kind of started going down that rabbit hole, we realized that there was a lot of offshore labor options that were available to us. And so, for example, we had someone who was on site doing things like receiving invoices and paying bills and cutting checks and all the sort of work that you expect an office manager to handle. And by offshoring that position, we cut the cost for that position by about 95%,
Hmm.
um, which was kind of a giant, eye-opening moment.
Tens of thousands of dollars.
Yes.
What year?
Well,
How long ago is this? How long ago did you kind of have this epiphany or start making some of these changes?
we started going down this road like 2017,
Okay.
2018-ish. And it took a while because there were some process adaptations that we had to make. We had to figure out, okay, how is this going to function from a technology point of view? How are we going to work with someone who's not even remotely in our time zone?
Hmm.
How is all that going to function? Um, but once we got the kinks kind of worked out, the results have been tremendous, and we've been able to outsource a lot of things that I didn't think there was any way to get it
Hmm.
done at first.
So let's pause. Let's pause there. I think what we'll unpack is just sharing from your experience. Here are the types of things that
Yeah.
we're having done, and here's kind of a glimpse at kind of the process and maybe a few of the pros and cons. That's the bulk of what I want to cover. But even what you've already gotten into is interesting. And this I was hoping the big takeaway from this episode more than anything else is people go, that's interesting. Anytime we hear new ideas, we have to be careful not to defend our current thought. And as a society, we're not very good at that. This is the way it's done. That would never work. Time out, time out. Just hear and try to understand and learn. This is a remodeler, just like everybody else watching this, who is dealing with overhead, who is dealing with, the cost of things, who's realizing, okay, I can increase my markup and my margins, and here's how much my overhead expenses are. And if I can, increase my gross profit margin and decrease my overhead expenses, that equals more net profit. I mean, these are things that we're all working towards and thinking about, and you've gone a direction that is unusual, that is not super common. So I just want people to kind of have an open mind and to be thinking about this, and to hear even you said, well, that's, as you were going through it, you're like, well, even things that I didn't think would be possible, all of a sudden, as we continued thinking through it, we realized, maybe we could do this as well. Maybe we could do that as well. So I wanted to emphasize that. It's pretty interesting. And we're talking, this is about 6 years ago that you started this path.
Well, and one of the things that really was interesting to me, there's a giant builder out like Utah, other side, literally at the other end of the country. But I adore what they do, and they do a combination of track and custom, and they're huge. And anytime I was at the build show, I always like to go, and if they had one of their executives speaking, I was going to go listen to them speak. And one of the interesting things that they had always said was, "Oh yeah, we make money hand over fist. Oh yeah, we make money hand over fist." Well, the company recently changed from father to son, and I am going somewhere with this.
Okay.
And the CFO.
Let me just snack on some beef jerky over here while you're
get a snack.
pontificating over there.
Get a snack. Yeah, I do like to pontificate. Well, and so the CFO was giving a presentation, and basically what he said was, well, a couple of years ago when the father decided to sell the company to the son, we had a hard time valuating because we figured out that we were losing money hand over fist.
Mm.
And I was kind of like,
That's the
oh, well,
opposite. That's the opposite of what.
that's fascinating. And he said that one of the things that we had to do was change a lot of how we handle our overhead. And I kind of asked, well, did you offshore anything? And he says, yeah, actually, we offshored our entire accounting department to the Dominican Republic. And we got it done for, like pennies on the dollar there, even building a whole building for them and setting up, everything they needed to have an office in the DR, because it was just that much cheaper. And I was thinking to myself, so if it worked for you and it worked for me, that means I wasn't as crazy as I thought I was.
There you have it.
Yeah.
So it's not just you. It's happening out there. So talk to us. You gave me kind of a list of here's the things that we primarily outsource to our virtual assistants. Start walking us through some of those things and kind of how it works. Maybe dig into a few of the pros and cons as you go through. I see some data entry into Buildertrend. I see month-end closing procedure, wrangling certificates of insurance. Maybe go through some of your favorite things that you've been able to outsource and talk about those a little bit.
Yeah. So my favorite thing that I've been able to outsource has been, without a question, data entry, and wrangling things like receipts and invoices and payables, basically ARAP, accounts receivable, accounts payable.
Okay.
And we run all of our job costing right now through Buildertrend. And questions of, is Buildertrend a good program or not? Aside, I think it is a good program for job costing, but there's a lot of interface friction. And so having someone who's trained in, okay, invoices come to a centralized email address and then they get plugged into Buildertrend, and we have all the job costing information that gets plugged in, et cetera, et cetera. And then at the end of the month, we go through the end of the month closing procedure, reconciliations, et cetera. And having those things done by someone directly that we are controlling has been very, very good for us. And I know a lot of people will say something, well, doesn't your bookkeeper do that? And the answer is, yeah, a lot of bookkeeping services do that. And a lot of them outsource to somebody in India or the Philippines to do that data entry. And so we just go straight to the guy.
Gotcha. Okay, so data entry, I heard a little glimpse of it. We have a central email that everything goes in there, and then when an invoice hits that, there is a process. This doesn't work unless you're very clear with step by step. We got language barriers, we've got time zone barriers, we've got several challenges there. So you've got to really have that step by step. And you have somebody that is trained on how to enter that in, where they go, where they log in, et cetera. Give me some other examples of what these folks are doing.
Sure. So other things that they do is plugging in social media posts into Hootsuite to be scheduled. Okay. Again, paying bills, paying invoices. We like to pay as much as we can through Buildertrend, but not everything can be paid that way. So just being able to give them a binary list, like, okay, call these 10 people and pay the bills. That removes a lot of time, and that's something that you would normally pay an office manager to do. Other things, wrangling 1099s and W-2s at the end of the year, having them collect all the W-9 information and then prepare 1099s. That is a real time saver. I have them doing document manipulation and cleanup. So just removing the onus on us to do the necessary clicking to do some of that document prep work that we all spend a lot of time doing. And then I also have them doing a certain degree of quantity surveying in the takeoff process. So here's a giant plan with a bunch of doors, windows, and trim that needs to be digitized and put into a takeoff that can go off to the lumberyard to be quoted. Well, that's really mechanical work if you get right down to it. So here you go. You're set up in square takeoff. Go do this incredibly mechanical thing that's going to save me quite a number of hours.
Okay, so that's unpacking some of the areas there. Let me go back a little bit. Where did you find these folks, or how did you kind of arrive at the team that you have, and how you're paying them, and how you have them set up? What does that look like?
Boy, that's an
Hmm.
interesting story. So when we started trying to find a resource to do this, we interviewed probably half a dozen different offshore um, companies that provide virtual assistant services. Am I still on?
Hmm.
Okay, so we interviewed probably half a dozen different companies that provide virtual assistant services, and just got on the phone and talked to them and tried to figure out who's going to be a good fit. And we found one that um, that was multidisciplinary, and that really surprised me. Like, okay, I can hire one company and they can do a bunch of different things, including like web page work and social media work and a limited amount of video editing, and kind of the list goes on. So we started working with them, and years later, the team that we were working with has actually now broken off and formed their own company,
Hmm.
and they're getting themselves off the ground. And so we've continued to work with them. So that's been a very, it's been an interesting path. And they're out of Calcutta. So we have not really too many language difficulties, other than they speak better English than we do. They have a very, I mean, it's accented, but they speak basically the Queen's English because they all learned English properly from Britain. Um, and so we have, yeah, the standard difficulties of, okay, well, you've got a little bit of a language barrier, but they write fluently, they speak fluently. You just have to get past the accent.
Hmm.
And there's time zone difficulties. But what we actually found was that these kind of teams usually have someone who works in the time zone of the companies that they work for. So that's maybe not such a big problem.
Yeah.
And then it's making sure that your systems are tight enough and cohesive enough and repeatable enough that you can say, here's a Microsoft Stream video of me doing a thing, and I want you to repeat this thing the same way every single month and every single time I ask you to do it. And once you can do that, then you can start working on, okay, well, maybe there's little variables, little things that we do differently from time to time.
Yep.
But it's very much about doing it the same way, which frankly, as soon as you have employees, you need to think about that anyway, because humans are humans. And I don't care if his name is, Victor or Vivek. Um, People are going to get confused if you don't have a fairly set way to do things. You can't
Yep.
change it up every single day and every single time. You've got to tell people this is how you do the thing.
Interesting. So I had two assistants in the Philippines for years early on in my business,
Yeah.
and I went through a program called onlinejobs.ph
Mhm.
and did some research on that. And first one, Cassandra. I'm forgetting my other one's name, but where it started was literally I was like, man, I got to go in here and click. It was ordering the kids lunches every week through this slow
Yeah.
program. Like, it takes me 4 minutes. I had just read Tim Ferriss's 4 Hour Work Week, so I was fired up on, like, I'm not going to have to work any. I'm just going to VA. Da, 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 da. And just like you said, Microsoft Stream. I record a little video. I use Loom a lot. If you guys aren't using a program to record your screen and your video and what you're doing, and use that for training, you should start doing that. And I recorded, like, here's what you do. You go in, click, 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 and then here's how you do the PayPal, and then just let me know when it's done. And once you've recorded that training, there is no reason that shouldn't be able to execute that very clearly. Well, 4 minutes, Kyle. Yeah, 4 minutes times weekly times monthly, it starts to add up. And similar to what you're saying, once you start to create these trainings and you start to say, well, what about this? What about that? The workload starts piling up. Another takeaway from this, whether you go the outsource route and you're trying to really optimize and reduce your overhead, and you realize you can get a lot more work done for a lot cheaper, which makes you more profitable, you could go that route. Or even what Aaron just said, I don't care if Sally and Fred are in your office two seats over, you need to be recording and getting your system and process foolproof so that consistency happens. So it's relevant no matter what direction you go. I think sometimes we have this fallacy of like, well, I did a quick training with them, they took some notes, therefore that's all set. Well, what if they leave? What if they get sick? What if they just didn't take good notes and it takes them twice as long because they didn't go step by step through this quick video? Those are things to be considering here. What do you pay these people, Aaron? How does that whole thing work, Mr.
Well,
95% savings?
yeah, right. So what I would say that you should expect to pay a competent VA is somewhere between, in India, somewhere between around $6.50 to $12 an hour, depending on how many hours you're committing to them. Most of the time, VA companies have kind of graduated plans where if I'm only using them for a few hours a week or a few hours a month, I'm going to pay a little more. Whereas if I hire someone who's effectively full time, then that cost can come way down.
Interesting. Okay, that's helpful. That's helpful. Now, there's a whole nother area that you were telling me about related to more the drafting and the plan drawing and that side of things, which I think is also a very interesting and an area that remodelers and builders need more help with. Tell us about that side of things.
Right. So that we've been talking about all kind of office and conventional, like this is back end kind of work. This is all overhead.
Yep, and some marketing, and some website stuff. I'm guessing some sales pipeline. I get a new lead in. Here's my new lead. Enter that into my sales pipeline. The list can continue to go on, I'm sure.
Yeah, please God, anything that reduces, and this is hard, I think, especially if people come from the field and not from an office mentality, where they think, well, you're sitting in front of your keyboard and you need a break, and they think, well, you must need a rest from all that rest that you're getting. But if you think about them, if I'm in the field, I'm driving nails, so I need someone else to drive nails for me. Mm-hmm. If I'm in the office, I'm clicking things and typing things, and I need to reduce the number of things that I click and keys that I stroke. And anything that I can do to do that is going to be time back in my day.
Got it.
So anyway, the other half of what we do, we are design build, and we have an architect in-house. And our architect migrated over in like 2016 to ArchiCAD. One of the benefits of ArchiCAD at the time was that it was designed to be a collaborative program. Whereas programs like Chief Architect, not so much. I think that's probably changed by now, but it is what it is.
Okay.
And the other thing that we found was that Revit or ArchiCAD are almost universal skill sets. Like you find people all over the world who know how to use QuickBooks. Well, you find people all over the world who know how to use ArchiCAD or Revit.
Or even Chief Architect could probably be thrown in there too.
Sure. At this point, yeah, for sure. And what we found was that at first we tried outsourcing ArchiCAD work to various local architects or draftsmen who hired themselves out, and it was really expensive, like between $75 and $200 an hour, depending on who you were hiring and what their level of skill was. And we really liked outsourcing it because sometimes you need help and sometimes you don't, but it was so expensive to do it that it was just hard to make it work from a business model perspective. So as we started working with office teams, or the office team in Kolkata, we were like, wait a minute, surely someone who is not on the almighty petrodollar can do this for us. And what we found was, hell yeah, there are extremely competent.
Now our podcast recording is going to say explicit next to it instead of non-explicit.
Uh-oh, I'm sorry.
I would
Can
be
we bleep
curious.
that out?
I don't know. That's fine. It's going to be interesting to see if it does, if it catches it.
Oh dear.
And does the HE double hockey sticks, does that constitute explicit? We'll see.
Does
It's
it
exciting.
constitute explicit?
Thank you for saying that, and then we'll see if it does or not.
Well, I will audit myself now.
Yeah.
So what we found was absolutely we can get very talented draftsmen, very talented architects, even engineers in other countries. We have folks in Egypt. We have one guy in the Ukraine. He's been spotty lately for obvious reasons. South America, who will happily take on as much drafting work as we can give them for somewhere between about $12 and $20 an hour.
And where'd you find these folks?
Upwork. Straight up. We do a lot with Upwork. And there's a new one. I want to say it's Deal that has popped up, but we've done a lot of our drafting outsourcing through Upwork. And I keep threatening to try and train my Kolkata team on ArchiCAD because I think they could do it.
Gotcha. So this part, the other part is very interesting, but even this part of, if I have, and you said, I've got an architect in-house. Hear that, people? He's got an architect in-house. What I'm imagining is, once you have the measurements, once you have kind of the plan, there's 60, 65, 50, 72% of the work, of the clicking, of the designing that can happen in this outsourced approach through Zoom video, through recording on Microsoft Stream or Loom, and they can take that and they can hand that off to your in-house architect to finish it off, to put his touches on it, to double check things, to do. Is that what's going on?
100%.
Yeah. And all of a sudden we're getting that work done, that solid amount of hours for $272 from our guy in South America that would have cost us $3,000, $4,000, $5,000. My architect in-house is able to handle more projects because the lower value work is already happening and being handed to him so that he can do his $1,000 work. He can really do the creative work and the confirming work and that side of things. Super interesting. You also gave a little bit of a key to unlock of going, you guys have heard of Upwork. If you go into Upwork and you type in, you use chief architect, type in chief architect and design work, drafts work, and you're going to see a bunch of people pop up, and you're also going to see a bunch of reviews related to those folks. And now you can get to work a little bit, do some research, try this out. Okay. What else would you add? What else would you add to that? It's super interesting.
So the same kind of caveats about the office work also applies to drafting. It's going to be you're going to get as good a result as you can specify. And you got to make sure that things like your object libraries are really well worked out, and you kind of know what you want. But the other big thing that we've found to be a huge advantage is that, let's face it, in our industry, work waxes and wanes, and it seems like everybody kind of makes their decisions to buy at the same time sometimes. So we've had as many as 5 or 6 draftsmen working for us at the same time in the past 20 months, and as few as none. And probably someone would tell me that you've got a marketing problem or a sales problem.
Well, you could, but I maybe, but design work is very much like that. Design work more ebbs and flows. So it's not unusual for it's like, we got too much going on, and then it's like crickets. That's not crazy.
Well,
it's business. It's just business.
Immediately after the pandemic was kind of coming to a slowdown, we got slammed. I mean, we had many projects that had been put on hold that were suddenly back on the table. And if we had not been able to scale our drafting efforts, we would have had to put people on, a 6, 7, 8 month wait list because there just wasn't enough.
Your bottleneck would have been your architect.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But by saying, you know what? Okay, cool. We're going to go do a bunch of measures, and then we're going to take all the measures and we're going to send them out to be turned into as-builts. And while, the teams are working on that, then Gina's working on something else. And that it removed those bottlenecks, and it frankly really helped, because not every project that you go to design is going to go to construction. And if you're trying to like choose, well, I think this one's going to probably go to construction, but maybe not that one, then you're doing things that you don't need to be doing. You want to take more work, not try to figure out who's going to go.
What about the estimating side? Have you been able to offload any of the initial estimating work or that side of things?
So what I have been fairly successful in doing is taking repetitive quantity surveying and having my team in Kolkata do some of that for me. So I touched on this, but let's say you've got a plan set that's got a bunch of doors and windows, right? And if you want to do a really good takeoff for doors and windows, then you need each location to be labeled as bedroom 1, entry, bedroom 1, closet, bedroom 1, ensuite bathroom, left hand, 2668, blah, 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 blah. It's a lot of work. But it's super repetitive, especially if you have a program set up where you have all of these objects set up as doors. And so I've been really successful in getting them to, okay, go in and do all the clicking and typing for me for the repetitive work. What I've been way less successful at is training someone to do lumber takeoffs. And to be fair, I don't even trust my guy at the lumber yard to do good lumber takeoffs, because they're never as thorough as I want them to be, and they omit things and they miss stuff. But I still have it in my head. There's a ringing bell that says all I have to do is figure out the right way to train this, and then they'll be able to do it.
Okay.
When I crack that code, I'll have a party.
Okay, sounds good. Maybe we'll do a third episode when you do that. So very, very interesting. Very interesting. Again, bigger picture. We look at the revenue we have coming in, and you look at your overhead expense, and oh man, it's 22%, it's 19%, it's 21%, it's 17%. What is it for you, Aaron?
So, wow, we're gonna have that. We're gonna have to.
Well, you don't have to. You don't have to.
Gross. No. Yeah. So look, I have actually no problem having that conversation, because we know those numbers. So one of the things that drives me insane about our vertical is that you get a bunch of remodelers, a bunch of construction guys in a room, and eventually and inevitably the conversation is going to steer towards, well, what's your markup? Is it 15%? Is it 20%? Is it
wait, are we talking about margin? Are we talking about markup?
Or margin.
You only have right. Oh, so you only have that much markup. Oh, but you have a really big markup on your in-house labor. There's a lot of deciphering to do, right?
Oh my God, what do we do? And the thing that always gets omitted from those conversations is, what's your overhead? What does your markup actually need to cover? And that's a much harder conversation to have. So what we have figured out is that for the level of work that we do, we have about a 10% overhead cost. And in terms of our net profit numbers, and people can laugh at me or not, but in terms of our net profit numbers, that bottom line, we're about 5 to 6%. Okay. And if you look at I love pulling out the NAHB's cost of doing business study. And if you look at the cost of doing business study, that's about average for remodelers, builders.
And you're doing some new construction side of things too. And then
we do a few, we do some custom new construction, not just a ton, but we do some.
Okay, gotcha. So, and where I was going, is, if I'm doing $2.5 million of revenue, and I'm at I did the math and then I moved it, I'm at 18% overhead expense. That's $450,000 overhead expense. And if I'm able to take kind of some of what you shared and say, there's $50,000 in there that we're paying this or that we're paying there, and I'm able to wind that down, it's going to, everything else the same, is going to reduce the percentage of my overhead expense, and it's going to trickle down and knock up my net profit. What you're hearing here is just some new ideas. I feel like outsourcing, was the conversation for a good number of years. It kind of quieted down for a little bit, and I'm starting to hear it pop up a little bit more. The big takeaways I'm having here is to think and be open-minded about things, to go to a website like Upwork and say, well, let me see what this is about. If you know nothing about this, go to Upwork and start typing in some different things. Oh, they do social media. They do design work. They do fill in the blank. And you can experiment with little projects and say, all right, let me send this to so-and-so and see what they come up with. You could reach out to Aaron and say, hey, you've got like 6 people that do drafts work. Is there one that you could connect me with, or could you send me their Upwork link? That could be a possibility because he's a nice guy.
I am. And in fact, if somebody wants to, I don't know, like, am I allowed to say if somebody wants to ask about the team that we use in Kolkata,
Yeah.
who is like trained on Builder Trend and Zero, ask me and I'll be happy to.
Yeah, the whole point of the podcast, the Remodelers on the Rise podcast, is to provide value, and that would be a very valuable connection. So
sure.
we do have to wrap up because you got things to do. You probably don't actually because you outsource it all, but I'm sure you got a couple things to do, and I've got some things to get to. So this was eye-opening. It was, hey, let's think through this. You gave a lot of tangible examples. I shared some of my takeaways. What would be something that you would kind of want to emphasize as we wrap up?
Just like you can't hire somebody that you think is going to fix all your problems, you can't hire a VA and have them fix all your problems if you can't define what the problems are. You've got to be able to tell anybody that you hire, I don't care if it's, again, Victor or Vivek, you've got to be able to tell them, this is how I want it done. And if you don't have that kind of, this is how I want it done, here's the steps, here's the training, then you're not going to be successful with any kind of hiring.
Yeah.
So yeah, look at VAs as someone that you bring on, and just like an employee, I want it done A, B, C, D, and don't treat them like anything other than a valuable human resource, because that's what they are.
Love it. Well, thank you for sharing your wisdom on this. I appreciate it very much. I appreciate your beef jerky inspiration, I would call it as well. And folks, we will do this again soon for the Remodelers on the Rise show. If you're listening to this on like Apple Music, Apple Podcasts, or otherwise, you might want to just click the little review button. Aaron, you could send to your VAs in Calcutta and say, hey, can you type up a wonderful review for Kyle? And you could do that. Appreciate everybody listening. Thanks so much, Aaron.
Absolutely. Have a great day. Thank you.